there is one question that physics cannot answer. Not because it lacks instruments, not because it lacks equations, not because the mathematics is too hard, but because the question points at something that cannot be approached from outside. The question is this: what is consciousness, and what is its relationship to the physical world? Every other question in physics has a methodology. Propose a theory, design an experiment, measure the result. But consciousness is the thing doing the measuring. It cannot step outside itself to observe itself. It cannot be placed under a microscope because it is the one looking through the microscope. For a century, quantum mechanics has been pointing at this question from one side. For 3,000 years, 6 ancient traditions were answering it from the other. Under the most widely taught interpretation of quantum mechanics, a particle exists in superposition, all possible states simultaneously, until it is observed. The act of measurement changes what the field becomes. This is the observer problem. Physicists have debated it since 1927. They have not resolved it. Eugene Wigner, Nobel laureate, one of the architects of quantum theory, stated it directly. It was not possible to formulate the laws of quantum mechanics in a fully consistent way without reference to consciousness. Not matter, not energy, not mathematics, consciousness. The most successful theory in the history of science cannot be completed without addressing the one thing science has no methodology to explain. In 1995, philosopher David Chalmers gave the question a name: the hard problem of consciousness. Chalmers posed it this way: even if we could account for every physical process in the brain, we would still face a further question. Why is any of this processing accompanied by subjective experience? Why is there something it feels like to be you? Science cannot answer this. But because the question points at something that cannot be approached from outside, it does not follow that it cannot be answered at all. 6 ancient traditions understood this with complete clarity. They did not study consciousness from outside. They turned the investigation inward. And what they found independently, across thousands of miles and thousands of years, was the same field modern physics describes, approached not as an equation, but as a direct experience available to any human being who looks with sufficient depth. Einstein spent the last 30 years of his life searching for a unified field theory, the single equation that would describe every force in the universe. He never found it. String theory, M theory, loop quantum gravity, the 50 years since his death have produced extraordinary mathematical structures, all attempting to describe the unified field. None has been experimentally confirmed. None has produced a testable prediction that clearly distinguishes it from all alternatives. Physicist Sabine Hossenfelder, in her book Lost in Math and her blog Back Reaction, has argued that the foundations of physics have not seen a major breakthrough in over 4 decades. Despite the most sophisticated mathematics human civilization has ever produced, the equations keep refining. The fundamental questions remain open. 3 of the 20th century's greatest physicists eventually arrived at the same boundary. David Bohm, who worked closely with Einstein at Princeton, proposed what he called the implicate order, a deeper level of reality in which everything is enfolded into everything else, and from which the visible universe unfolds, as a kind of continuous projection. What we take for reality is only the surface appearance. Beneath it is an enfolded, interconnected totality. John Wheeler, who named the black hole, spent his final decades arguing for what he called the participatory universe. No phenomenon is a real phenomenon until it is an observed phenomenon. Observation records what is already there. observation participates in what becomes real. Wolfgang Pauli, who gave physics the exclusion principle, spent years in correspondence with Carl Jung about the relationship between the psyche and the physical world. Pauli wrote, "It would be most satisfactory if physics and psyche could be seen as complementary aspects of the same reality. Three different men, three different conclusions, all arriving at the same territory. Consciousness is not a spectator of the physical world. It is a participant, perhaps a constitutive feature." This documentary is not an argument that ancient traditions replace modern physics. It is an argument that they complete it. That the question physics cannot answer requires an instrument physics has not yet learned to use. What follows is six traditions' answer to that question. Six descriptions of the same field. Six practices for directly recognizing what physics can only point toward. The Vedic tradition is the most explicit. The Upanishads, composed in ancient India between approximately 800 and 200 BCE, describe the unified field through two complementary concepts. Brahman, the universal consciousness, not a god in the Western sense, not a creator separate from creation. The field itself, aware, unlimited, undivided, the single ground from which all phenomena arise, and into which all phenomena return. Akasha, the field substrate, the medium in which all vibration propagates. The Kena Upanishad states, "That which is not seen by the eye, but by which the eyes see, know that alone as Brahman, not what people here adore." Not something seen, the seeing itself. Not an object in the field aware of itself. The Upanishads then make the most radical move in all of ancient philosophy. They identify the individual observer, the awareness present in your experience right now, as identical to Brahman. Tat tvam asi, you are that. Not, you will one day become Brahman. Not, Brahman is something you approach through practice. You are that. The awareness that is present right now, the witnessing that was there before this sentence began and will be there after it ends, is the same field that pervades all of space. The observer problem, which quantum mechanics cannot resolve, is not a problem for the Upanishads. The observer is the field. There is no separation to explain. The practice the Vedic tradition developed for directly accessing this recognition is called Atma Vichara, self-inquiry, associated most powerfully with the 20th century sage Ramana Maharshi, though the method is as old as the Upanishads themselves. The practice is precise. When a thought arises, any thought, ask, "To whom does this thought arise?" The answer comes, "To me." Then ask, "Who is this me?" And instead of answering, look, turn attention back toward its own source. What every practitioner of this method consistently reports, what Ramana described and what thousands of students have confirmed, is that when you search for the I directly, it cannot be found as a separate object. The seeker and the sought dissolve into the same awareness. Not as a conclusion reached by reasoning, as a direct observation. The unified field not approached from outside, but recognized from inside, as what the observer has always been. The Hermetic Tradition, encoded in the Emerald Tablet and preserved in texts attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, names the unified field with a directness no other tradition matches. The Kybalion states, "Under and behind the universe of time, space, and change is ever to be found the substantial reality, the fundamental truth." That substantial reality the Hermetics called the all. Infinite, no boundary, no outside, omnipresent, equally present at every point in space, simultaneously. The substrate of all physical reality, matter and energy, are vibrations within the all, not separate from it. The first Hermetic principle, the principle of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Quantum field theory describes every particle as a vibration in an underlying field. The Hermetics describe the same structure in 7 principles, long before the mathematics existed to formalize it. The Hermetic tradition encodes its practice in the language of alchemy. The great work magnum opus, the transformation of lead into gold. Not literally, lead is the contracted ego self, the consciousness that believes itself to be a separate, isolated entity. Gold is the recognition of that consciousness's identity with the all. The great work is the systematic dismantling of the false identification through observation, through practice, through what the Hermetics called know thyself, and thou shalt know the universe and the gods. Self-knowledge as the path to knowledge of the field, the same direction as the Vedic self-inquiry, different language, the same laboratory. The Hermetic tradition and the Vedic tradition share structural properties so precise that scholars have debated for centuries whether there was contact between them. The Vedic Brahman and the Hermetic all, both omnipresent, both the conscious substrate of all reality, both accessible through turning attention toward its own source. The conclusion most consistent with the evidence. Both traditions were independently investigating the same field and finding the same answer. The Tao Te Ching describes the unified field with a precision that has startled physicists for a century. Chapter 42. The Tao gives birth to one. One gives birth to two. Two gives birth to three. Three gives birth to 10,000 things. The unified field giving rise to the first symmetry break, which gives rise to the fundamental forces, which give rise to all observable matter. The Standard Model maps this cascade with equations. Chapter 42 mapped it in 4 lines. And the Tao Te Ching begins with a statement that 3 generations of quantum physicists have recognized as a precise description of the relationship between the field and the mathematical representations we use to describe it. The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. Any equation describing the unified field, a named version, a map, not the territory. The actual field precedes all representation. The Taoist practice for accessing the field directly is called Wu Wei, effortless action. Not passivity, not inaction. Action that arises from the level of the field itself, rather than from the contracted ego self that believes it is separate from the Tao. The Tao Te Ching describes the sage as one who acts from the Shin, the unified heart-mind, rather than from the reactive, calculating surface mind. Chapter 37. The Tao never acts yet, through it all things are done. If the powerful could center themselves in it, the whole world would be transformed by itself. Stillness, not as the absence of activity, but as the recognition of the Tao's presence, in and as every moment. Niels Bohr, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, spent the last decades of his life struggling with a problem that was not mathematical. After his famous debates with Einstein at the Solvay conferences, Bohr concluded that quantum mechanics had revealed something ordinary language could not express. He wrote, "We must be clear that when it comes to atoms, language can be used only as in poetry. Only as in poetry. The field cannot be named, it can only be pointed toward, and the pointing, if it is honest, will always be poetry." Before the next 3 traditions, a pause. Not a pause in the argument, a pause in the mode of attention. 3 traditions have described a field. Let us stop describing and notice. Sit upright if you can. Let the eyes close. Take a slow breath in through the nose for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold gently for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale slowly through the nose for 8 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, inhale 4. Hold 4. Exhale 8. One more time. Inhale 4. Hold 4. Exhale 8. Let the breath return to its natural rhythm. This is tuna expelling and drawing in. Taoist breath cultivation. The nervous system settling before we go further. Let the eyes open. 3 traditions. 3 descriptions of a field that sounds remarkably like the quantum vacuum. There is an obvious objection, and it deserves to be stated clearly. Before we go further, physicist Sean Carroll, in response to claims that quantum mechanics supports mystical worldviews, wrote, "Quantum mechanics is a specific, well-defined theory. It is not a license to imagine whatever you want about the universe." The objection is this: ancient traditions described interconnection, formlessness, and potential. Quantum field theory describes interconnection, formlessness, and potential, but 2 descriptions that sound similar are not necessarily descriptions of the same thing. The Taoists were not running experiments. The Hermetics were not measuring particle interactions. The Upanishads make claims about consciousness that no instrument has yet confirmed or denied. The parallels could be genuine convergence, 2 investigations reaching the same territory from opposite directions. Or they could be pattern matching, the human tendency to find connections where only vague similarity exists. This is a fair challenge. The remaining 3 traditions will have to answer it, not with more parallels, but with specificity that vague similarity cannot explain. The Buddhist tradition responds to the pattern-matching objection with the most structurally precise description of any tradition we have examined. Sunyata, usually translated as emptiness, does not mean nothingness. It means empty of inherent, independent, self-sufficient existence. Every phenomenon arises in dependence on every other phenomenon. Nothing exists separately. Nothing has properties independently of everything it has interacted with. This is not a vague gesture toward interconnection. This is a specific ontological claim. No entity possesses intrinsic properties. Properties arise only from relationships. Nagarjuna, the 2nd century Buddhist philosopher, formalized this as dependent origination. His arguments are logical, not poetic. His conclusions are falsifiable. They make specific predictions about what you will and will not find when you look for an independently existing self. The Heart Sutra compresses it. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is not other than emptiness. The field and its expressions are not 2 different things. The vibration and the field it vibrates in one reality. Nagarjuna, published in the 2nd century. Aspects experiments confirmed quantum non-separability in 1982. The gap is 18 centuries, but the structural claim is identical. No particle has properties independent of its relationships. The Buddhist practice for direct access to this field is Vipassana insight meditation. The method is precise. Sit in stillness. Observe the arising and passing of all phenomena, sensation, thought, emotion, perception, without identification, without resistance. As the observation deepens, the apparent solidity of each phenomenon reveals itself as a rapid, impermanent, interdependent arising, not a fixed object, but a momentary vibration in the field. The practitioner begins to see, not with the eyes but with direct awareness, that there is no separate observer, only the observing itself. What remains, when the identification with phenomena completely drops, the Buddhist tradition calls nirvana, the extinction of the self-sense. That was the only thing preventing the recognition of the field that was always already present. In 2005, the Dalai Lama addressed the Society for Neuroscience. He said, "Buddhism and science share a fundamental commitment to the truth. Both reject blind faith. Both are committed to following the evidence wherever it leads." He concluded with an observation that could have come from a quantum physicist, that the deeper you investigate reality, the less solid it becomes. Place one hand gently on the center of your chest. Feel the warmth of your own hand, the subtle rise and fall of breath. The Egyptian tradition does not begin with the mind. It begins here. The Egyptians placed the IB, the heart, at the absolute center of consciousness. Not the brain, the heart. Modern research has found that the heart's electromagnetic field extends measurably beyond the boundary of the physical body, and that states of appreciation and coherence produce distinct, measurable changes in cardiac rhythm and field output. The Egyptians knew this not through instruments, but through 3,000 years of contemplative practice that treated the heart as the primary organ of perception. Keep the hand on your chest. We will come back to this. The Egyptian tradition describes the unified field through two primordial principles. None, the primordial waters, the undifferentiated field before creation, the formless potential from which all structure emerges. Modern physics calls this the quantum vacuum, the ground state of the unified field, not empty space but the most densely energetic state known. The Shabaka stone, the Memphis theology, inscribed approximately 700 BCE, from a text believed to be far older, describes creation not through physical force, but through thought. Ptah, the Creator, brings the world into being. Through the heart's conception and the tongue's command, all things came into being through what the heart thought and what the tongue commanded. Consciousness conceives. Expression collapses potential into form. The observer problem, formalized by quantum mechanics in the 20th century, was embedded in the Egyptian creation account thousands of years earlier. The most sacred ritual in the Egyptian tradition, the weighing of the heart, describes the moment when the individual consciousness confronts the field directly. The heart is weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the feather of truth, balance, and cosmic order. The feather weighs nothing. A heart clear of contraction, fear, and false identification, balanced with the feather, recognizes its identity with the source, not as reunion, as recognition of what was never separate. You may still have your hand on your chest. The Egyptian tradition would say, "You have been practicing since the moment we asked you to place it there." The heart, not the argument, is the instrument. In 13th century Andalusia, a young scholar named Ibn Arabi left home on a journey that would consume his entire life. He was not looking for a theory. He was looking for what was real. He studied law, theology, philosophy. He sat with Sufi masters across North Africa and the Middle East. He wrote by some accounts over 350 works. And what he found after decades of investigation was not a concept. It was a direct recognition, one that he described with devastating precision. Ibn Arabi called it Wahdat al-wujud, the unity of being. There is nothing in existence but veils. That which is veiled and that from which it is veiled are one and the same. Not. The self connects to the field. Not. The self discovers the field. The self and the field were never two things. The separation was the veil, and the veil, he says, is itself made of the field it conceals. The Sufi practice for this recognition is called fana, the dissolution of the false self. Not destruction, recognition. Ibn Arabi described it. I was what I am and what I will remain. There was no change. There was no new condition. There was only the fall of the veil. This is not the language of someone who found a parallel with physics. This is the language of someone who stood where physics has not yet arrived and reported what he saw. 3 traditions before the objection, 3 traditions after it. The Buddhist tradition did not offer a vague gesture toward interconnection. It offered a specific ontological claim confirmed by experiments 18 centuries later. The Egyptian tradition did not describe consciousness metaphorically. It described a creation mechanism heart conceives, expression collapses potential, that mirrors the observer problem in structural detail. The Sufi tradition did not philosophize about unity. It reported a direct recognition arrived at through decades of systematic investigation, that the observer and the field are identical. Sean Carroll is right that quantum mechanics is not a license to imagine whatever you want. But 6 traditions investigating from the inside, arriving at the same specific structural claims that physics later confirmed from the outside, is not imagination. It is convergence, and convergence in science is evidence. Let us see what 6 traditions independently described. Property 1. Omnipresent. Brahman pervades all of space. The all is infinite and without boundary. The Tao flows everywhere. Sunyata is the nature of all phenomena. None contains all potential. Wahdat al-wujud. One existence. No outside. Every tradition without exception the same first property. Property 2. The source of all matter and energy. 6 traditions, 6 vocabularies, the same claim. Property 3. Consciousness is not separate from the field. The Vedics stated it. The Hermetics encoded it. The Taoists pointed at it through silence. The Buddhists demonstrated it through logic. The Egyptians located it in the heart. The Sufis recognized it through surrender. Now the properties modern physics assigns to the unified field. Omnipresent. Source of all forces and matter. Scale invariant. Prior to observation, and increasingly entangled with the act of observation itself. 6 traditions arrived at the same territory, from 6 different directions. The founders of quantum mechanics noticed the parallel themselves. Heisenberg, in Physics and Philosophy. The atoms or elementary particles themselves are not real. They form a world of potentialities or possibilities, rather than one of things or facts. A world of potentialities, not things, not facts. The same description every ancient tradition gave of the field, before observation collapses it into named phenomena. Schrödinger, in What is Life, posed what he called the arithmetic paradox. The reason why our sentient, percipient, and thinking ego is met nowhere within our scientific world picture is that it is itself that world picture. Consciousness cannot be found inside the model because it is the modeling. These were not casual observations. These were the architects of quantum mechanics. recognizing that the territory they were entering had already been mapped. Integrated information theory, proposed by Giulio Tononi, suggests consciousness is a fundamental property of any system that integrates information, not produced by complex brains, present in any integrated system. Orchestrated objective reduction, a more controversial proposal from Penrose and Hameroff, suggests consciousness arises from quantum processes in the brain's microtubules, connecting human awareness directly to quantum spacetime. Both theories are incomplete. Both point in the same direction. The science is arriving. The map was drawn a long time ago. Everything we have covered in this documentary has been pointing at a single practical invitation. Not a belief to adopt, not a philosophy to memorize. The field is not in these words. It is not in the physics. It is not in the ancient texts. It is what is present right now, as the awareness receiving these words. Two more protocols from two more traditions. The breath has already settled the nervous system. Now we go deeper. Let the eyes close. The hand may already be on the chest. If not, place it there now. Feel the warmth, the subtle rise and fall of breath. Now bring to mind something or someone you genuinely appreciate. Not a thought about appreciation, the actual felt sense in the chest of appreciation. Let it grow. The Egyptians called this state the heart aligned with Ma'at. The heart light is a feather, the moment when the individual field becomes coherent with the universal field. The heart's electromagnetic field is expanding right now, beyond the boundary of your skin, interacting with the field that surrounds you. Keep the hand on the chest. Maintain the warmth in the heart. Now gently bring attention to the awareness itself, not what you are aware of, the awareness. Notice that you are aware. Ask quietly, not as a verbal question, but as a direction of attention. Who is aware? Do not answer with a thought. Simply look. Turn attention back toward its own source. The Vedics call this Atma Vichara. Ibn Arabi called this the recognition of the real. The Taoist tradition called this returning to the root. Rest in whatever opens. Ibn Arabi wrote, "I was what I am and what I will remain. There was no change. There was no new condition. There was only the fall of the veil." The question physics cannot answer. What is consciousness and what is its relationship to the field is not a problem to be solved from outside. It is a door to be walked through from inside. Let the breath deepen naturally. Let the eyes remain closed for one more moment. The Vedics called this Satchitananda, being, consciousness, bliss, not three separate things, one reality experienced from its own center. Take one final slow breath. and gently return. Physics is the science of the field approached from outside. The ancient traditions are the science of the field, approached from inside. Both are necessary. Neither is complete without the other. For a century, quantum mechanics has been pressing against a door. It does not have the instrument to open. The observer problem, the measurement problem, the hard problem of consciousness, three names for the same locked door. 6 ancient traditions spent 3,000 years on the other side of it. They were not guessing what was there. They were standing in it, describing it, teaching others how to walk through. The question physics cannot answer is not a failure of physics. It is an invitation to turn the investigation inward with the same rigor, the same honesty, the same commitment to evidence, and discover what the ancient traditions discovered. 6 ancient traditions, 3,000 years of independent investigation, 6 descriptions of the same field. Brahman, the All, the Tao, Sunyata, Nun and Atum, Wahdat al-wujud. And one question, pressed against the boundary of every equation, every experiment, every interpretation of quantum mechanics, that all 6 traditions answered from the other side. What is consciousness? Physics says, the observer changes what the field becomes. 6 traditions say, the observer is the field. If both are right, what changes when you know that? That question is not answered in this documentary. It is answered in the looking. Ancient wisdom, quantum proof, direct knowing. This is quantum gnosis.